Hi guys, welcome to Coding Ambitions. In this video, we will learn how we can navigate in Compose Multiplatform. So this is an app I have developed in previous video for Android, iOS, desktop and web. It's supporting all targets. So currently we have only one screen, but if you want to add one more screen, so how we can do that, and how we can navigate from one screen to another screen, right? In Android, we can use the Jetpack, we can use the navigation component there, but that is not yet supported for multi-platforms. But here we will be using the Decompose. Let me give you introduction about Decompose. So Decompose is a Kotlin Multiplatform library. So actually it's breaking down the code into lifecycle aware components. So business logic components, you can say. So suppose this is the list screen, we can create list components, and then if we will be going to detail screen, then we can call that detail component, and whole app like that is the root component. So that is the way how we can divide our app UI in the different components. So let's continue with this. Let's start adding it. So first of all, we need to pick up this, and let's go to the Gradle and add it in the common main dependencies. Okay, so let's add it. This is the Groovy version. We need to add the Kotlin version like this, and this is the latest version we need to use. Actually, if you see here, so support for iOS and web are supported and published from a separate branch, that is the Compose experimental. So we will be using this currently, right? And then similarly we need to add it provides two extensions there, like one is for, you can see it here, so it provides two extensions for Jetpack for Android or multi-platform Compose for Compose JetBrains, Compose Jetpack, right? This is only for Android, this is for Kotlin Multiplatform. So we will be using this one, right? And so this is the step one, and second step is we need to apply the serialization plugin. That is already there, but we can add it like it is the second step. And now let's sync it. And also one more thing we need to do. So for Android side also we need to add the dependencies. For Android specific dependencies will be added there, because few things in Android are provided by default, like the default app context will be provided there, so default component context. So we can sync it, we can mention it, this step 3. Right, so syncing is done. So let's move on to the, so if you want to I forgot to tell you one thing. So this app I have created in the previous video, so I will put the link of the video in the description. So and also you can check out how to create Compose Multiplatform app. So let's go to here and let's start adding our components. So inside this common main, so let's divide. So if you see, I have created some folders there. So these are for, like, we can create for the features, root, list, detail. So these will be creating the business logic components here. So inside root, let's first of all add the let's create the interface. So because using interface, it becomes easier to performing the testing there, right? Creating the double of these classes. So first of all, we need to identify what we need in the root component, right? So in the root, we will be having two children. Like first is the list component, second is the detail component. For detail component, detail child. For list component, list child, right? So we can create a child class here for holding that child configuration, right? And then we can create class list child, and that will be extending this child itself. And inside this, so we can pass component list. We'll be creating this very soon, but I'm just creating the child first. Detail child, and then we can make it detail component, right? So other rest of the things will be coming up here later. So first of all, let's add list and detail components, right? Then it will become easier to implement these classes inside the root component, right? So rest list, let's add this. So again, we need to use it as an interface. So inside the list component, what data or business logic we will be needing, right? So there will be a one function, because when user will be clicking on this, so we need to move it to detail, right? So on item clicked, and here we will be getting the product item, right? And then we can hold the data as well here inside this model. So what data we'll be holding here is, so data is here. What is the data? So list of products, right? Right, cool. And we can declare one model variable here that is of type value. So value is similar to the state, actually. It can be like subscribed. Similarly, how we collect the state from view model, the same similarly we can subscribe as state to this value in the decompose, right? You can think it of like equivalent to state, right? So this value is of this type, right? This is the data. So similarly inside viewmodel we keep up the mutable state or state there, right? State flow or state. So similar to this, similar to them, this is the value here, right? In decompose. Okay, and then this is the interface. Now let's default list component. Let's create this class. So it will be extending the list component. And one more thing, so it will be accepting the one parameter. This is the very urgent. So component context, very important part of every component. So it holds the few things related to life cycle, state preservations, handling the backlick. So those things is provided by this component context, right? So, and we need to use delegation here. So because it also needs to extend the component context, because inside this we will be using the ChildStack that will be used for the navigation. So, and that ChildStack is an extension function to this class, right? And second thing will be, we need home view model here, right? And third thing will be, we need some way, like we need some callback here actually. On item selected, we can say, and it will be of type, so it is a callback, right? So whenever user will be selecting any item, so what we need to do, this will be triggered from the UI part, right? This will be triggered. So now let's come to here. So similarly, how we are handling the state inside the viewmodel, we need one private variable and one public variable, right, for exposing, or private for updating, right? So similarly we can create it here, some mutable value similar to the mutable state. We have mutable value as well, right? So it will be of type list component dot model, right? And what will be the initial value? Empty list. Cool. and then we can expose one public variable here. So this one is we have already defined here, right? So we can override this one, so we can add the override, yeah, this one, right? And this one be holding the value of from this model, right? So this is it. And now inside this init, so we need to from the view model we need to fetch the changes, and then we need to set this state here, right? So what we can do for that, we can use coroutine scope here, dispatchers dot default and launch here, right? And here what we can do is home view model dot products dot collect, we can collect them here. And then what we can do, we can update the model it, so it is of type, so we need to use list component dot model and then items, right? Okay, cool. And so then what we need more here, okay, so let's implement member as well on item clicked. So this will be triggered from the user side, right? Because the component we pass in the content itself there in the UI side, right? So from the UI will be triggering this, and then this will be triggering this on item selected, right? And this will be then doing the main work, right, inside the root component. So this is done now, and let's make them private. Okay, cool. So now again similar to this, let's create the detail component. Cool. Default detail component, again few things will be similar. Component context, this is required for every component. Home view model, so I think we don't require it here. But if let's say for detail, currently we'll be just passing the item from the here this data, and we are not calling the API on the detail screen. But if you need to call that, you can create different view model for that maybe, or as you wish, you can if want to add that inside this one itself. But I think it will be better if you create separate, and you can pass that here, but currently we are not doing that, right? So and from here it will be the on back pressed, user will be pressing the back. So then what we need to do, we can call this and we can implement this in the root component. And similarly here we can add this callback, this will be triggered from the user, right? And this model here, what we need is item only, single item of product type, right? Cool. And here let's on back pressed remove this variable on back pressed, let's trigger it if you see. So on back we can name it for just confusion. So this is it, yeah, this one. And here we need to use detail component dot model, right? Here also we need detail component, and here it will be the item. So yeah, so one more thing here we will be passing this item from here, right, from the list. So we can use this one as well. And we will be passing this value directly here, right? and inside the init, so as we are not calling any API here, so we can omit this, right? If we need to call API, we can call that here. So maybe we can just add if we need to call API in detail component as well. Right. So this is about detail component, and now let's move back to the root component. So these are imported now, and inside this root component, we need one function that will be the on back. We can name it maybe clicked, on back clicked. And what else we need here? So actually here we need one more thing, that is the stack that will be holding the child stack, right? Stack value of child stack. So child stack is the main part. So let me quickly give you some intro about this. So if we go here, I can show you inside the navigation. If you see child stack, child slot, child pages, there are three ways for navigation. We will be using this one. We can ignore this one as of now. So this one is for the dialog. If we want to show some dialog or bottom sheet, for that we can use this one. For the paging, like pagers, we can use this, but currently we'll be using this one, right? So it is holding the stack of childs, right? So we can give it yeah, child, it will be of this child type, right? If you see it, it's correct, right? And here any type, like it will be of, actually if you see here, it is the configuration. It will be the configuration actually, right? So these are the few things, and now we can implement the class default root component that will be extending the root component and component context as well. And this one we will be adding the parameters here. If you go here, so we can pick up, you can just pick up these all. Actually, we need view-model as well. From main activity we'll be passing this, and so then on item selected, so this one we don't need, right? Cool. Let's implement members. Okay, so on back clicked, what we'll be doing is, actually we will be using the navigation here. Here we will be using the child stack, right? So if you go here, it requires source key and many more things. So let's add the source here, and for that we need one private val navigation, that is the stack navigation. That will be of type stack navigation, right? Even we can directly initialize it here, and it again requires config. So we need to create config class as well. So config class is actually a serializable class we need to create in here. So that is like holding the everything. Like if we need to pass one parameter from one component to another component, we can use the config. And this is also used by stack navigation. So stack navigation will be the main part here. So child stack and stack navigation, these two things. So this is holding the configurations or child data, right? This one will be the navigation part, right? Doing the navigation here. So let's create the config class, child class, or maybe we can create even interface config, right? And we can make it serializable. And now we can create, if there is no parameter, we can directly just create the data object. If we need to pass any parameter from one component to another, let's say in the detail we need to pass, so we can create data class detail config, right? And here we need to pass what? Item of product type, right? Cool. Okay, so let's make these classes as well serializable. Okay, done. And now let's create this stack navigation here, and this navigation we need to pass here. So source of this stack is this navigation, right? And so what else it needs? So it needs one more thing, this serializer. Config.serializer, it automatically creates that there. Because that is serializable, so we can use that serializer here, right? For config class, right? And then we can specify the initial configuration. So we have two configurations, if you see. So which configuration we want to show initially in the root? This list one, right? This will be loaded initially. So you can assume like which destination we want to show. If you are from the Jetpack Compose, so you can think of it like the which destination we need to show first, right? So it is the list config, right? Config.list, and then we need to pass the child factory here. So for that we'll be creating one method here, and also we can pass one more parameter. So if we need to handle back button from this child stack automatically, so we can pass true here, right? So for child factory we can pass one, we can create one parameter here, child factory, and it will be, so what it will be providing is, it will be providing it as it is, its name is child factory, so obviously it will be providing the child, right? How to provide child according to the config, that part will be defining here. I will be explaining it, just stay with me. So it will be accepting the config parameter, and config, and what else it we need here, component context, right? Why we need this, I will show you in a couple of seconds. So when config is config.list, so then what we need to do is which child we need to show. So we need to create two, actually childs are already there, list dot root child dot list child, right? Inside it we need to pass, so inside here we need to pass list component. If you see, and inside list component what we require, so if you see we can pass that implementation of list component, this one, right? So it requires component context, that's why we need component context here, right? Component context comma, so home view model, so that home view model we can directly pass from the parameter this one, right? What else it need? Last one is the callback, right? on item selected. What we need to do on item selected, right? So on item selected, what we'll be doing, we'll be pushing the configuration actually on item selected. So this one will be pushing the configuration, and according to the configuration which we have pushed, the content will be changing. So we need to push config.detail here, right? And inside this config, what we need is item. So it will be providing us the item, right? We can write it, it will change the content to detail, right? So, and second part can be, if it is detail, then what we need to show is detail child, and here we need to show detail component, and again it requires 3 items here. So component context, and then on back we will be using it in the end if better, right? And so before that we need to do is item, right? So, and if you remember, we need to pass everything, data parameter or anything we want to pass between the components. We can use the config for that, right? So from config we can pass it. So here whenever we are pushing, so here we are config.detail, we are pushing this config, and here we are getting the item. So now this item is inside the config. So here from this config we are getting that item, right? And this one is the on back test. So on back test, what we need to do is we need to pop that configuration, right? So if we are on current component or on current configuration, according to the current configuration we have suppose detail child here. If user presses back button, what we need to do is we just need to pop up that config from the navigation so that we can return back to the list component. Okay, so this is the child factory, and we can directly pass its reference here. We can make it private, you can see. So this one is done, and on back click, if we need, even we can that directly, if we want to reuse this, so we can add it here so that it can be reused, right? Okay, so this one is also done. Now it's time to move to the UI part. So let's first of all move to the list UI, list content. It will be the composable function. So before that, let's come to the root content actually, right? So inside the root content, so what we need to define is, it will be a composable, right? And here what we need to do, so what parameters it might be expecting, it will be expecting the component, root component. Inside the content we'll be passing the component because component holds everything there, right? Data, config, everything will be there if we need to use, right? Stack as well, right? So and now we will be using the children composable from the decompose, right? This is from decompose. It is a composable function which you can see here. So it provides few things: stack, modifier, animation, content. So we will be defining all the children for root. So for root can be like our app, right? For root we have 2 children, list and detail, right? So we'll be passing the stack here. So we can pass stack from the component dot stack, and then what we need to do is we can pass the modifier, and we can, if we need to apply any modifier here, we can get it from its parent, right? And then third one is animation. We can use stack animation function for that. That is provided by the extensions for decompose, which we added. If you remember, we have added extension. So these children stack animation, these are provided by the extensions, right? So here we can use any fade animation currently, and here we need to define the, if you see it dot instance, so it will return child dot created, right? If you see child dot this data class, it will be holding the configuration and instance. We can use that here. Let's go back. And now we can apply the condition here. So when child is root component dot child dot list child, then what we need to do is list content, right? If it is and inside this again we need to pass the component. So from this child dot component, right? If it is the list child, it will be passing the list component. Is detail child, it will be passing the detail component, right? Because the child will be holding the component. If you see, so child is, what is the child? If you go to here, so it will be holding the component, right? So that component will be passing. So now similar to the list content, let's create detail content as well. Detail content, right? It will be requiring the detail component, and the list will be requiring the list component, right? So if you see detail content, yeah, so this one is also done. Now let's move it inside the declaration. Okay, cool. So this root content is done now. Now let's move to the we will come back to this list and detail content, so UI part later. So what we need to show inside these screens, but before that let's use this root content. So we will be using it from the, suppose first we are adding it in the Android side. So let's add it here. So it requires root component, right? So we will be creating the root component object here. So it requires component context, right? So we can pass the default component context. This is provided by Decompose actually. So this is the first, and before this we need to create the viewmodel instance here. So I just want to tell you, so in that video, so where we have created this app, we have used the Moco MVVM for using the viewmodels inside the multi-platform environment, right? So we will be passing this here, and then we will be passing this root here, and what else it need, we can just pass the modifier here, and this app will be cutting out from here, and this content we will be needing from, we will be using it inside the list content actually, right? So inside the list content, so what we need to do is sell products. So we will be using the model, so model holding the data, right? Model dot subscribe as state. So similar to the collect as state, we have subscribe as state for the model, that is your value type, right? And then we can use app here, and inside app actually we can pass this state parameter. If you see, state of list component dot model, right? So we can just import the state here, right? And we can directly pass that inside the app content instead of view model. So we can just remove this, and here we will be using this products. So let's pass this as it is inside here. And one more thing, we need to use our user item click, so that will be the callback here, right? So these products we don't need, we can directly use them, right? We can pass them from here, and then on item clicked, what we need to do is we can trigger the component. Even we can just remove this. Actually it's confusing, you don't need to use that, you will be confused. Actually it's just the app content, this will be going inside the list content, don't need to worry. So we will be using this inside here, and here we will be passing the products, and here we will be passing the callback. So for the callback we need to pass the item, right? Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to make few changes here. So if you see these items, product dot value dot items, right? Okay, that's it. So now this is going inside the list content, and now let's go to the detail content. So inside the detail content, so we will be just simply showing the only product title and description. Actually I'll not be going to in depth there. So for that what we can do is we can just get the first of all product here. Again the same thing, model dot subscribe as state, right? And then so we can, what we can do is if we want to align it inside the center, so we can use alignment dot center, and inside this we will be using the scaffold, and also let's make it modifier fill max width, right? Let's take it fill max size, let it take up the complete size. And inside the scaffold, so we can specify the top app bar, and inside the top app bar we can apply some modifiers. First of all, let's modifier dot window insets padding, so we can add it this padding actually, so you can just check it. And well, let's specify the title. Inside the title let's specify it, right, product detail. And then after the title, what we need to specify here, we can specify one navigation icon as well, icon button on click, right? And inside it we can just specify the icons dot default dot back arrow back, right? And here what we need to do is component dot on back press, right? User will be clicking on the back icon, so we need to trigger that components on back press method, right? And what more it need, we need to opt in for experimental API. What else it's saying? Surround with lambda. Yeah, so because it is a CC composable, so we need to define it inside the function, right? Cool. Icon, and it requires content description as well, right? So this is it. Now we can just use one column here. Inside the column we can just give the horizontal alignment dot center. Actually we can just give the vertical arrangement first. Arrangement dot center, and now let's just give the product title product dot value dot item dot title, right? Similarly we can specify the description here, and it's done. Now let's try to move it, run it, sorry. So this is the for Android part, and now actually everything is done. Now these components logic is done, navigation, business logic, this is done. Now we just need to use this root content actually the way we have used it from here. Similarly we need to use it from iOS and desktop and JS targets as well, right? So let's check it. Yeah, we didn't add the one item click inside the list content actually. So let's go there, and okay, so this is the card, and here we can make it clickable, right? And here we can trigger on item clicked, and here we can pass the product, right? If you see, it's done, but it's not coming in this center. So let's check it inside the detail content. So modify dot fill max size, alignment dot center, then the scaffold, and we have then the column inside that. Yeah, actually we have not applied the modifier here. Fill max height, fill max width. Yeah, it's fine. If you see, fade navigation, fade animation is also there, and we can apply some padding as well here, 16.dp, right? So this is done. You can see navigation is working fine, right? Cool. And the one thing, even if we need to call the API here, so we can do this similar to the, you can check out the how we have created the home view model, and we have called that inside the list component, right? So you can say if we need to call API as well, in that case we can do this part, right? From the home view model, similar to the home view model, we can create separate view model for this, and then trigger the API there inside the view model, and then collect that here and set the its data, right? So it will be updated then, right? So now let's quickly finish it for the iOS side as well. So here root content, so it requires root default root component, and it requires component context. Default component context, that class, yeah, this one. And this requires lifecycle, so we can pass the lifecycle registry here, right? What else it needs? It needs some view model. Usually we don't do this like this way, so we'll be creating the dependency injection for these things. We should do that, but that will take more time. We will be doing it here. So main agenda here is to understand the decompose for the navigation, right? So we can pass the root, and then we can pass the modifier. Actually we can, if you don't want to specify, so we can define it the default value here, right? And that's it, done. We just need to do this part, right? Now let's try to run it for iOS. Meanwhile we can add it inside JS main as well. So we can pick up these things, and here we can do this, right? It looks cool. And similarly inside the desktop as well, we can add the similar things. For the iOS app, I will tell you one more thing actually. So yeah, so this is done now. You can see it's loading, and it's going to the detail as well successfully, right? Cool. So this is the way how we done the navigation. But one thing I would like to say you guys. So first of all, okay, so inside this side, so we can add the one class for the lifecycle callbacks impl, and it will be implementing this. If we want to track, override on create, on destroy, if we want to do some stuff on these callbacks, so we can do that. But so currently this is by this way, this is not attached to the iOS application lifecycle, right? You can just try this one as well. You can try to print it here, println. So this part we'll be covering in the separate videos, how we can attach, how we can do this proper navigation for the iOS side, because for that we need to attach the lifecycle to the application, iOS application lifecycle, right? So then it will be working perfectly fine with that. But if you see here, we can create lifecycle registry, then lifecycle dot subscribe. Here we'll be passing that implementation, right? But if you see, this is not perfectly fine currently, but I will cover this in the separate video, how we can do it properly from the Swift file, how we can attach it, so that it will be attached to this. Let's say if app is destroyed, so then this destroyed will be called, so they will be in the sync. This lifecycle callbacks will be in sync with the app lifecycle, right? App lifecycle methods. So if you see here, you can see it's not printing these, right? So because this is not attached to the app lifecycle, right? That is not the good way actually. I will be covering this in the separate video. If you see, on destroy is also not called here. I have destroyed the app, right? So this thing we will be covering in the separate video. Stay tuned for that. I will show you guys how we can do that. So from here we will be passing this one is called from the iOS app. From there we will be passing this everything. These things will be created from there itself, and then there we will be attaching that to the app lifecycle, right? So this is all about, guys, for the navigation in Decompose. So I would like to point out main things. So actually how the flow is working, let me quickly go through that. So basically it's a 3-step procedure. I concise it as a 3-step procedure. So first of all, you need to know about the component, right? Inside the component you need to define all the logic, right? So if you need for the root, we need to define children as well, right? These, for otherwise if we don't have any children, we can just define the data there, right? So value type data will be there. We can define the data for, suppose here, this model value type and the functions and if any data class, right? So then the main thing is like this navigation part, this is performing the navigation, right? And this child stack, so this is holding the all the child configs, right? So depending upon this, its source is this navigation, right? So this navigation is using so depending upon this navigation, so we will be pushing the configuration or popping the configuration. So if we push the configuration, suppose this, we want to move to the detail content, so we can push the config.detail. So detail config, this is the data we are passing there. We can pass the data inside the config and then we can pick up that here from the config. Why we need to use that inside the default content, oh sorry, detail component. And this is very important part of this. So config will be defining the, depending upon the config, so we can, this child factory will be defining the which UI to show, right? If config is list, so then when it is the list child, it is returning the list child. And if you see for this list child, so depending upon this list child, here we will be inside the root content. So depending upon that, inside that, sorry, inside here we'll be changing the UI. So basically it's if you point it out, so it will be the component, it's holding the config, and so depending upon the config we are deciding the child, and then depending upon the child we are deciding the UI. So it's pretty easy way to remember this. Component will be holding the config, so we will be pushing the config, so for deciding, and then depending upon the pushed config we will be deciding the child here inside the child factory, right? And then depending upon that child we will be deciding the UI inside the root content, right? It's pretty easy. So for config we can say pushing and passing data, right? So it's the, in this one line I have covered few things for you guys, right? So this way it works actually, right? Config, depending on the config, deciding the child, then depending upon the child we are deciding the UI. So that's all. And so this config is the main logic. We'll be pushing it in navigation, pushing in navigation and passing data. In this line we can define all these things. So it's pretty easy to decompose. Some people I have heard saying like it's very difficult, but if you understand it completely, it's very good library. So it separates out logic and UI parts completely. You can see the logic part is completely inside the components, and then you can see UI part is completely inside the content side, right? So if you see inside this root content, so now it will be the everything related to UI, right? So this is all about guys, it navigation in Compose Multiplatform app. So you can try out running the other apps, so it will be working fine hopefully. So this is all about the navigation in Compose Multiplatform. I hope you guys have liked this video, and if you are new to my YouTube channel, please subscribe. And if you have already subscribed, please like, share and comment, so that will motivate me to create more videos on Kotlin Multiplatform and Compose Multiplatform. So that's it about, I am wrapping up here. So I will see you in the upcoming video. Till then, bye bye, take care, have a great time, keep coding.